crypto holders, XRP holders, stock market investors, this video you must watch. Governor Christopher J. Waller has just given a speech at the Payments Innovation Conference at the Federal Reserve Board in Washington, D.C. Christopher Waller is one of the 7 voting members of the U.S. Federal Reserve Board of Governors, giving him a permanent vote on all FOMC decisions that set the US interest rates. We've got one coming up next week, and we're covering it live on the show. He was appointed by President Trump in 2020. He has emerged as one of the Fed's most influential and data-driven policymakers, known for balancing a pragmatic, research-based approach with a firm commitment to the Fed's independence. His speeches often shape market expectations, and many view him as the leading contender to succeed Jerome Powell as the next Fed chair. So in this video, you're going to see his opening remarks at this conference. You're going to see his closing remarks as well. And in the middle, you're going to have my analysis of his opening remarks. So do watch all the way till the end. We did cover this event as an 8-hour event. This is going to be a video that will come out and will show his opening and closing remarks. If you haven't watched them yet, or if you have, just watch them one more time to really understand what's coming for the market. Now on with the video.
And now it is my pleasure to introduce Governor Chris Waller.
Good morning. All right. Well, thank you, Susan, and good morning to everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Federal Reserve Board for our first Payments Innovation Conference. My objective in creating this conference is twofold. First, I wanted to have a conference that focused on the new technologies that had come from the DeFi and crypto worlds and how they are entering into the mainstream payments ecosystem. My goal is to have a vibrant discussion about payments between traditional payment incumbents and the new entrants from the DeFi world. Second, I wanted to send a message that this is a new era for the Federal Reserve in payments. The DeFi industry is not viewed with suspicion or scorn. Rather, today, you are welcome to the conversation on the future of payments in the United States and on our home field, something that would have been unimaginable a few years ago. My view for the Fed from now on is embrace the disruption. Don't avoid it. As you know, we are well into a technology-driven revolution in payments, and I'm here to say that the Federal Reserve intends to be an active part of that revolution. A number of technological advances are transforming the payment system. Stablecoins and tokenized assets making use of distributed ledger technology. The rapid adoption of artificial intelligence AI, and increasingly the convergence between these innovations and the traditional financial ecosystem. This includes the institutions and infrastructure that our economy has long depended on to operate a safe and efficient payment system. And yes, this also includes the Federal Reserve. The revolution in transforming payments is demanding change everywhere. And I will say more in a moment about some new ideas that the Federal Reserve is studying to support those innovations. I have spoken before of what I see as the 2 broad models of payments innovation.
Please do hit the like button and subscribe.
The first is private sector-driven innovation. Most innovation comes from the private sector, which is motivated and best positioned to allocate resources and take risk with new technologies. The second model is when public sector entities, such as the Fed, build platforms and provide services that enable the private sector to more readily and rapidly expand new services to its customers. This should be done rarely and in limited circumstances where it addresses a specific market need. The posture of public institutions, including the Federal Reserve, should be to acknowledge and embrace private sector innovation that can improve the payment system while preserving its safety and stability, which are as essential to the new generation of innovators as they are to legacy institutions. Now let me pull back a moment and remind everyone how we got here. Since nearly its founding, the Federal Reserve System has worked to facilitate payment and settlement system efficiency alongside the private sector. From the beginning, the clearing services obviated the need for daily movements of cash in armored cars with heavily armed guards. Long before we started speaking of the payment rails that are facilitating the kind of innovation we're discussing today, the Fed was running trains on steel rails to deliver and clear paper checks traveling across the country. FedWire began conducting interbank transfers through telegraph wires in the early 20th century. Fast forward today, where we have multiple infrastructures that settle interbank transfers in real time. Today's conference will focus on private sector-driven innovation. We have assembled 100 private sector innovators who are leveraging cutting-edge technology to create new possibilities in the payments landscape. Our panelists are engaging in integrating traditional financial payment rails with distributed ledgers, developing new products and services in the digital asset ecosystem, and leveraging AI in the payment system. It's worth noting that the firms engaged in these activities include banks, asset managers, retail payment firms, technology companies, as well as crypto-native fintechs. This is an acknowledgement that distributed ledgers and crypto assets are no longer on the fringes, but are increasingly woven into the fabric of the payment and financial system. Now, before we hear from these innovators, I would like to touch on roles that the Federal Reserve plays to support the private sector. These include serving as a convener to solve coordination problems and operating core payment and settlement infrastructure. We are also looking ahead, conducting hands-on research on tokenization, using smart contracts, and the intersection of AI and payments for use in our own payment system. We do this to understand the innovation happening within the payment system, as well as to evaluate whether these technologies could provide opportunities to upgrade our own payment infrastructures and to enable us to have deeper conversations with the industry on these new technologies. While this is a good start, I believe we can and should do more to support those actively transforming the payment system. To that end, I have asked Federal Reserve staff to explore the idea of what I'm calling a payment account. Today, Federal Reserve banks provide access to master accounts and financial services to legally eligible entities following our guidelines for evaluating account and services requests. The payment account would be available to all institutions that are legally eligible for an account and would be beneficial for those focused primarily on payment innovations. This payment account concept would be targeted to provide basic Federal Reserve payment services to legally eligible institutions that right now conduct payment services primarily through a third-party bank that has a full-fledged master account. There are many eligible firms engaged in substantial payments activities that may not want or need all the bells and whistles of a full-fledged master account, or access to the full suite of Federal Reserve financial services to successfully innovate and provide services to their customers. The idea is to tailor the services of these new accounts to the needs of these firms and risks they present to the Federal Reserve banks and the payment system. Accordingly, and importantly, these lower risk payment accounts would have a streamlined timeline for review. Payment innovation moves fast, and the Federal Reserve needs to keep up. To be more concrete, let me describe a possible prototype that I've been considering for this type of payment account, or as I sometimes call it, a skinny master account. The account would provide access to the Federal Reserve payment rails while controlling for various risks the Federal Reserve and the payment system. To control the size of the accounts and associated impacts on the Fed's balance sheet, the Reserve banks would not pay interest on balances in a payment account, and balance caps may be imposed. These accounts would not have daylight overdraft privileges. If the balance in the account hits zero, payments will be rejected. They would not be eligible for discount window borrowing or have access to all Federal Reserve payment services for which the Reserve banks cannot control the risk of daylight overdrafts. Now, I want to be clear that this is just a prototype idea to provide some clarity on how things could change. The upshot is that, in my view, the payments landscape, as well as the types of providers, has evolved dramatically in recent years, and accordingly, a new payments account would better reflect this new reality. As Federal Reserve staff examine this idea, we will engage with all interested stakeholders to hear their perspectives on the benefits and drawbacks to this approach. So you will be hearing more about this shortly. So let me wrap up here so we can get to the really exciting part of the conference, not me blabbering, which is about innovation in the future of payments. So thank you to the panelists who took the time to participate, those in the audience who agreed to be here, and the many others watching online. And a special thanks to Fed staff who moved incredibly fast to pull this event together and fit it into a very busy fall schedule for the Fed. So on with the conference, and thank you for being here.
That was great. A lot to analyze there. I'm just going to taking some quotes out. So this is a new era for the financial reserve and payments. The DeFi industry is not viewed with suspicion or scorn. Rather, today you are welcome to the conversation. He is acknowledging that the DeFi and crypto innovators are legitimate participants in US payments policy. He is one of the only people at the Fed who is really going and seeking to bring events like this, which is just starting, and to help these companies and these crypto stablecoin blockchain companies. He then says stablecoins are tokenized assets making use of distributed ledger technology. They are transforming the payment system. This is basically a direct mention of XRP, RLUSD, and similar ledger-based payments tokens, squarely within Fed's current research focus, signaling regulatory recognition of infrastructure underpinning them. So I've taken a speech, I've put it through a software, and we are getting the key quotes and what's so important about this. So he's talking about basically XRP and other tokens that do the similar thing in that quote. He then said the posture of public institutions, including Federal Reserve, should be acknowledged and embrace private sector innovation that can improve the payment system while preserving its safety and stability. It reinforces that innovation will be led by private entities like Ripple, Evernorth, and fintechs, with Fed acting as partner rather than a barrier, which could ease compliance gateways for XRP-linked institutions. He then says firms engaged in these activities includes banks, asset managers, retail payment firms, technology companies, as well as crypto-native fintechs. Distributed ledgers and crypto assets are no longer on the fringes. So the Fed explicitly includes crypto-native companies within its mainstream payments ecosystem, a milestone acknowledged that supports XRP's positioning as a bridge asset rather than a speculative asset. He then said, we are conducting hands-on research on tokenization, smart contracts, and intersection of AI and payments for use in our own payment system. So direct confirmation that the Federal Reserve, it's not finished already, there is now panels starting. Federal Reserve is testing tokenization and smart contract integration mirrors developments on the XRP ledger. I have asked Federal Reserve staff, and this was his big announcement today, that he's asked the Federal Reserve staff to explore the idea of what I'm calling a payment account, targeted to provide basic Fed payment services to legally eligible institutions. Remember, there's Fed master accounts. And now he's suggesting a simpler version of that everyone should have access to. The proposed payment account, or the skinnier master account, could let licensed fintechs and tokenized platforms plug directly into the Fed rails, a potential gateway for regulated blockchain-based payment firms. And the last thing he said was payment innovation moves fast. And at the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve needs to keep up. Why it matters is a signal of urgency, suggesting the Fed no longer intends to lag behind crypto and DeFi innovation. So that was a speech directly from Fed WALLER. I hope you enjoyed that first part of his speech, his opening remarks plus my analysis. What we're going to do now is move 8 hours ahead onto his closing remarks. Remember, this was about an 8-hour event. We covered it all live on the show, so make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you do hit the like button. But now what we're going to do is fast forward, go to his closing remarks. This was an event we covered a couple of days ago on the show. So now you can get to see his closing remarks after listening to all the panelists and his final thoughts. Very interesting. Do give it a thought. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't got our newsletter yet, it's in the first link in the description. Now on with the video. Fed representative speaking now ahead of the
All right, well,
FOMC
thank you,
next
Susan.
week.
And let me begin to end things by thanking all the panelists and also those of you in the audience who engaged with some great discussion. I'm always struck by the fact, I've said this to a few people over the last day or so, every time I think I have an understanding of what's going on, I go to these things and I realize how little I know. So I have to keep going, so I keep learning and learning and learning. So sitting in the audience today reminds me of how important it is to listen and learn from innovators on the ground, both newer entrants and incumbents alike. Today allowed us not only to focus on what is happening in the payment system, but also envision where it might go next, as we were talking a bit at the end. I jotted down some notes about what I've heard today, and I'll wrap things up by highlighting some of the really interesting points made and ask a few questions. It's clear from our discussions that innovation in payments is coming in many forms. What I heard from our panelists from discussions during the breaks is that the industry is moving as quickly as possible on a number of fronts, from finding ways to interoperate across and between traditional and new ecosystems, to reimagining the consumer purchase experience through the use of AI and AI agentic agents. All of this points to a future where payments move more rapidly, securely, and seamlessly across networks, both domestic and global. I also heard from many panelists about the growing importance of tokenized money in unlocking the next phase of payments innovation. We heard from a variety of panelists about evolving roles that could be played by stablecoins and commercial bank deposit tokens, and the potential efficiency and inclusivity gains these forms of tokenized dollars might deliver. And we ultimately heard a lot of discussion about very classic economics of payments issues. That's at the deep depth of my heart. Beyond technology, what stood out today was a spirit of collaboration across the ecosystem. I've noticed this over the last couple of years. Instead of, dude, we're going to take your job and drive you out of business, which was kind of the crypto world about 6, 7, 8 years ago. It's all like, how do we work together? I mean, this is a profound cultural change in the way people think about these things. We heard bankers and developers speaking the same language about openness, interoperability, and the need for shared standards. And we may have even coined a new term in ScaleFi. Things are changing fast in the world of payments, and it will be interesting to see a year from now how much has changed, or perhaps become more defined about the innovations we discussed today. It remains to be seen just how quickly some of the innovations being discussed now will be widely used or leveraged in the marketplace in the coming year. Now, how quickly might we reach that point is discussed today, in which most consumers interact with tokenized money in their daily lives, unaware of the new technologies at play. I mean, that was kind of a theme. Consumers don't care about the technology underlying things. They just want to know, can I use my money to pay for something? Am I going to get money from somebody? They don't care how it gets done. We care about how it gets done, right? We do, to make sure it's done efficiently, cheaply, and safely for those consumers. What will the blockchain infrastructure rails look like, and how many different stablecoins might circulate on these rails? I mean, I think this is a big question. There's a lot of talk about lots of stablecoins, but at the end of the day, consumers have to choose which of these things they want to use. It may be very widespread. There may be just a handful that actually used, and the rest are just a tail. That's what we're going to find out by letting it loose and seeing what the consumers want to do. And which future innovations that are unforeseen today will challenge our assumptions and understanding what is possible in payments in the future. So thank you all for making this conference such an informative and enriching experience for me, and I believe all my colleagues here at the board. Thank you to those watching online, and a big thank you to the Fed staff who did such a spectacular job pulling this event together in a very short period of time. And with that, thank you and goodbye.
So thank you for tuning in to the whole video, watching his opening remarks and his closing remarks, plus my analysis in the middle. I hope you enjoyed it. There's actually going to be 2 videos up here for you to have a look at. There's going to be my newsletter down here. There's going to be a link here. Please do go and check it out. I'll be live again every single morning. So until the next one, take care of yourselves and each other.